If you watched the show on the News and Why It Matters, yesterday's show, that would be the show on the 7th of the month, and we discussed Andrew Cuomo. And I want to, again, more thoughts that I want to add on this. Let's go ahead and just give you guys perspective on what's happening right now. So Cuomo here, as mentioned, is saying that, his executive order, he's declaring a disaster emergency on the issue of gun violence. And there's a series of tweets that I want to make sure that we get read here. Here he is right here. He says, today, and this is on the 6th of July, says, today, I am issuing an executive order declaring a disaster emergency on gun violence. Gun violence is a public health crisis, and we must treat it like one. This declaration will allow us to give crisis the full attention and resources it deserves. He also continues here. Combating gun violence means getting illegal guns off the street. 74% of guns used in crimes in New York State were purchased out of state. The New York City Police, or the New York State Police, I guess, it will form a new gun trafficking interdiction unit to stop the flood of illegal guns coming into the United States from states with weak gun laws. So Andrew Cuomo is a dick, but what this does is speak to kind of the direction that we're going to go in going into the future. I know progressives, for lack of better terms, like to see themselves as like people that attack or Democrats or mainstream leftists. They attack the issues head on. And this is just yet another example of no, they don't. But also what we saw last year, unfortunately, not everything is going to be deemed as a public health crisis. Racism is a public health crisis. And he even continued on to say, where is it at? Right here, for example, education says it's a civil rights issue. Gun violence is education. All of that is to discrimination. So he's putting those in the same vein. And he says if you can beat COVID, you can beat gun violence. You can beat poverty. You can beat all these other things. Blah blah blah. So calling it epidemic, making it akin to all these other things, and all this really does is allow them to reroute funds that they stole from y'all to these other efforts and line politicians, administrators, and government employees' pockets. That's really what this all boils down to, because we know that New York State ain't stopping shit when it comes to guns. People that want to get them, and even if they're doing them for the sake of aggression, they're going to do that shit regardless. This is why the only thing that you ever do when you make gun laws more strenuous or you try to have a crackdown, all you do is make it more difficult for people that don't want to do crimes to protect themselves. That's really all it is that you ever do. But they don't care about that. But let's speak to the actual issue of what it is that he's saying here. See, that's the part that I take issue with. We talk about violence in these issues, and he even acknowledges that this obviously impacts more black and brown communities. He says, and I quote, gun violence is hitting black and brown communities hardest, and it's compounding the damage from COVID. They've been hitting those communities the hardest for a very long time, and that's a cultural problem. Now, I know people don't like to hear me say that, and I'm not even one of those that are going to just pull that old black on black violence shit. No, I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. You not want to talk about it or don't like the people who do bring it up as an argument doesn't mean that it's not a problem. But the reason why it continues to be a problem because nobody wants to address the issue head on. And it's not just the Cuomos and the politicians, it's your black leaders as well. Your black leaders as well as your fucking civil rights leaders, your artists, your entertainers that are in those spaces. They don't want to tackle this issue head on because that will require them to look in the mirror. That will require them to see how they aid in this effort. Because this is what I say. I grew up in the area. Obviously, I've been in the cities, but I've also been in a position to where I was living in like more like Arkansas, for example, where everybody and their mama owned guns. And like especially in the country, and they weren't shooting anything. Shooting everybody up. It requires nothing of you to not shoot your neighbor. Requires nothing of you to not steal from people, right? I know it's the ongoing legacy of slavery. This is again why the issue is the issue, because they're not honest with it. Ongoing legacy of slavery. It's because of poverty. It's because of all these different things. It requires nothing of you to kill your to not kill your neighbor, or not to shoot your neighbor, or not to commit violent acts against your neighbor. It requires nothing of you. So what are you telling me when you bring that up in these communities? You telling me people such as my mothers or my mother's mothers who lived in times, my grandma grew up, or my mother grew up 45 minutes south of the Little Rock Nine, where the Little Rock Nine took place. You know, when there was actual like government sanctioned racism, right? Obviously, that prevented a lot of people from gaining economic power that were black. Obviously, right now, blacks on average from an economic and buying power standpoint are better off than they had ever been before. So why is the conflict the way that it is right now? Again, it's a cultural issue. These issues, this is why I say two things can be true. I can think the cops are assholes. You ain't gonna never hear me say, probably, you're not gonna hear me protecting them. It's just not gonna happen. What I am gonna say though is that two things can be, it's true. They could be assholes, but if you just get rid of them, that doesn't necessarily just solve the issue. That issue doesn't go away. I'm not one of those brainlets who think that, okay, you just abolish one thing and the problem goes away. No, it's specifically the opposite. It's that, yeah, great, get rid of it, but there's an issue there, the cultural underlying issue there that has to get resolved if that area, groups of people are going to sort of exist, or rather coexist peacefully. That's a cultural problem that makes you want to kill your fucking neighbor, basically, or attempt to, for nothing. People getting shot, definitely out there in New York for nothing. For nothing, bro. That's a cultural problem, man. You expect Cuomo's of the world to attack that head on? No, all these rappers that they get to be a part of their little vaccination projects and all that shit, you think they gonna fucking do it? Of course not. One thing I always bring up is that I grew up banging. You know, I mean, I was a knucklehead, giving my mama hell growing up. I didn't need a good reason to get in a fight or anything like that. And obviously, the bulk of people who we were beefing with, let's say that, were other black people. And at no point in time, I remember, no point in time was it ever suggested that I was a lesser than black person or I was a fake black person when I was throwing up gang signs and beating up other black people. You could literally terrorize other black people's community as a black person, and it will never be associated. Terms they will not call you coon, house nigga, all that sort of stuff. They'll never call you that stuff. But, well, you start to think a little different. Hell, you even demonize bad behavior that you once participated in. Now you a coon buck dancer for white folk. So what you're telling me is that it's okay for me to terrorize my own fucking neighborhood surrounded by black people. I can do that shit, make their lives live in hell, make it not a place where people want to live, make it a place where people don't want to invest in because it's not conducive for them to do so. I can do that. And that's expected of me as a black person. I can be violent against other black people. That's expected. But what's not expected is for me to now think differently and maybe even condemn some of those acts. This is what I'm talking about. It's a cultural problem. And that will require all of these motherfuckers to look in the mirror. And this is why the subject of violence doesn't get resolved. But why they now, because they are so afraid of doing that. You know what I mean? This is why I don't take activists, these pro-black activists. I don't take fist in the air. These motherfuckers ain't to be taken. All that other shit they be talking about, that's all projection. Like these motherfuckers, they don't give a damn about any of that. They done showed y'all many times these race hustles, they get away with the loot. But that gives them an easy out to act like they're trying to address the problem, but blaming it on something else. And that's the guns in this case. They're blaming it on the fucking guns. Not themselves, not how they have sort of, let's say, aided in this cultural thing here, phenomena, if you will. They don't want to do that. They don't want to address that head on. What they will say, okay, we can just blame it on the fucking guns. It's the guns. The guns are the reason why these people are acting like this. That's the route that they want to do. That's the route that they want to go. So will the problem ever get resolved? No. They're going to throw more money at it. In this case, more policing, more money at it, and the issue is not going to get resolved. That will require an effort by people, not just within those communities, but culturally, to demonize that. And it's funny because you know the people who generally do demonize violence, like actual, by violence, I mean aggressive violence in this case. So not defense. That's why I'm talking about. Aggressive violence are the gun owners, generally. The people that advocate for responsible ownership for guns. We talk about de-escalation tactics. We talk about being responsible with, not just how you shoot, getting you trained, all of that stuff. That's generally coming from the gun advocates. That ain't coming from the other side, because they think, okay, we just make it illegal, throw more money at it, line everybody's pockets, then the issue is going to be resolved. And that's why the issue will fucking never be resolved. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.